My name is Mike Thompson, and if you had asked me 10 years ago where I'd end up, I never would have guessed here. 40 acres of wild, untamed land, tucked away a mile from the nearest paved road, surrounded by nothing but thick woods and the sound of a creek that sings me to sleep every night. This cabin, rough around the edges but solid to the core, was built by my great-uncle, Jim Thompson, a man who was as tough as the land he worked on, with calloused hands and a heart that softened only for animals and family. When he passed, he left it all to me. No strings, no mortgage, just a will, a key, and a legacy. I've spent most of my life as a forest ranger, boots on the ground, tracking animals, listening to the woods breathe. It's not a job for everyone, but for me, it felt like home. I wasn't made for offices or city lights. I married late, but damn lucky I did. Claire, me wife's the kind of woman who doesn't flinch at the howl of wolves or the crunch of snow beneath her boots at midnight. She's steady, the kind of woman you can count on to get through a storm. And when I told her I wanted to leave the hustle behind and live somewhere where the only neighbors are the trees, she didn't hesitate. "Let's go," she said. So we did. We moved into the cabin that spring, the last remnants of winter still in the air. The trees were starting to bud, the trout were biting in the stream, and the world felt like it was waking up after a long sleep. I spent my days fixing up the roof and reinforcing the porch while Claire set up her teaching space by the window, looking out toward the evergreens. At night, we'd sit by the fire reading, or just listening to the coyotes in the distance. It felt like we were finally breathing again. But, of course, nothing ever stays simple for long. Just a mile to the east, there's a neighborhood, Maple Hollow Ridge. A fancy name for what's really just a bunch of big homes crammed together, all slapped with some cedar siding to make them look like they belonged in the woods. At first, I didn't think much of it. The HOA that ran it didn't affect us. Our land was old, legally separate, and there were trees, mountains, and a creek between us and them. As long as we stayed on our side of the line, and they stayed on theirs, I figured we'd never cross paths. I was wrong. It started with a knock. Not a polite one either. More like a demand, sharp and insistent. I was out back, chopping firewood, when Claire's voice rang through the open window. "Mike, there's someone at the door," she called out, her tone tight. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked toward the front steps. There, standing in the yard like she owned it, was a woman in a beige blazer, sunglasses perched on her head despite the overcast sky, and a clipboard like it was an extension of her will. I knew the type before she even spoke. I remember thinking. She looked at me, then at the cabin like she was inspecting a piece of junk. "Mr. Thompson, I presume?" she asked, all fake politeness. "I'm Karen Bennett, president of the Maple Hollow Ridge Homeowners Association. We need to talk." I nodded slowly. "We do." She smiled, but it was tight, almost like she was forcing it. "It's about the cabin. Your setup, to be precise. We've had complaints that your structure doesn't conform to our community standards. The sightlines from our eastern lots are disrupted by the rustic look of your home. There's also concern over wildlife." I stared at her. "You mean my home is too rustic?" I asked, trying to make sense of her words. She didn't even flinch. "Rustic is one word for it. Let's just say it doesn't fit with the cohesive aesthetic of our neighborhood." I glanced around. The trees, the grass, the dirt path leading up to the cabin. The nearest house, a good half a mile away, hidden by the forest. "Ma'am, with respect, this land has been in my family for generations. We're not part of your HOA." Her smile faltered for a second. "I understand that's what you believe, but the association has recently reviewed our boundaries, and we've determined your property falls within the area we're seeking to unify under our updated covenant guidelines." I raised an eyebrow. "Seeking to include us?" She nodded, her tone sharpening. "It's for everyone's benefit, safety protocols, fire mitigation, appearance standards. People are concerned about hunting cabins, firearms, wild animals. You can understand how that might unsettle families." Claire, who'd been standing behind me quietly, crossed her arms. "We're not endangering anyone. We live here peacefully." Karen turned to her, the condescension thick in her voice. "I'm sure you mean well, dear, but this lifestyle, it's not exactly compatible with a modern residential community." I took a step forward, voice firm. "Let me be clear. This is private land. We're not joining your HOA. We're not interested in your covenants, your meetings, or your style guides. We're neighbors, not subjects." Her smile disappeared entirely. "You'll find," she said, voice low and cold, "that non-compliance has consequences. The board has options." I didn't say another word. I just held the door open for her. She hesitated for a moment before turning and walking back down the steps, her heels crunching on the gravel. Just before she got in her SUV, she called over her shoulder, "Think about your future here, Mr. Thompson. You might find the HOA is more involved than you think." And just like that, she was gone. Claire and I stood there in silence, the wind rustling through the trees. Both of us knew Karen wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I had planned to be away for just 2 days, deep in the northern ridge where the elk trails cut through the timber. The kind of place where the air's so still you can hear your own breath. It was the kind of peace I needed. The kind of silence that lets you think. The last few weeks had been too much tension, too much uncertainty. I needed to get out of town to clear my head. I told Claire I'd be back by Sunday evening, kissed her at the door, and left. By late Saturday, I was halfway back to the cabin, a buck strapped to the back of the truck. The sun was dipping low when I noticed something out of place. 2 vehicles, shiny, new, and completely out of place, were parked on the trail that led to our cabin. One was just beyond the brush, hidden from view. Neither was mine. My stomach dropped. I killed the engine and moved off the road, slipping silently through the woods the way I'd done for years. Low, invisible, careful. When I got close to the clearing near the cabin, I crouched down behind some brush, scanning the porch. And there they were. 3 men, all built like they played high school football 10 years too long, wearing matching blue vests that said, "Neighborhood Watch Maple Hollow HOA." One of them leaned against the porch railing holding what looked like a stun baton. Another had zip ties hanging from his belt. The third stood by the door, which was wide open. Inside, I could see Claire, cornered in the living room. She was trying to stay calm, speaking softly, her hands raised as if she was trying to talk someone down. And standing right in front of her was Karen. I moved quickly, silent, low. I circled around the cabin and snuck in through the back door. I crept down the hall with the rifle slung across my chest, my boots barely making a sound on the pine floors. When I stepped into the living room, I heard Karen's voice, cutting through the air like glass. "You think that deed means something? We have signatures, authority. The board has decided this land will be brought under control one way or another." Then her eyes met mine. Time froze. I leveled the shotgun, finger off the trigger but close enough to make a point. "Get away from my wife," I said. Karen froze. One of the men reached for his belt, but he saw the muzzle of the gun first. I racked the slide loud, deliberate. A sound that no one mistakes. "You've got 10 seconds, I said. "Explain what the hell you're doing in my home, or I'll assume you're here to do harm. And I'll respond accordingly." For a long moment, no one moved. The man closest to Claire backed off slowly, his hands raised. The other 2 looked at each other, unsure of what to do. But it was Karen who spoke first, her voice sharp, full of righteous fury. "You're threatening us with a firearm? We're conducting a lawful inspection under HOA authority. You're making a very serious mistake, Mr. Thompson." I didn't blink. "You broke into my home. You laid hands on my wife. You think your HOA badge gives you a free pass to commit a felony?" Her eyes narrowed. "This property has been added to the jurisdiction of Maple Hollow Ridge," she spat. "You're living here illegally. It's a safety hazard. It's unsightly. It violates everything the board stands for." I tilted my head. "The only thing that's a hazard here is your arrogance. That deed's on the wall behind you. Go take a look. It's notarized, filed with the county. It predates your entire damn subdivision. This land has nothing to do with your rules, your meetings, or your committee." One of the men stammered. "Look, we didn't mean to scare anyone." Karen interrupted, her voice a hiss. "This was a community enforcement visit. You were refusing mediation. We were just trying to keep things safe." I turned to Karen, my voice steady. "You planned this, didn't you? Waited until I was gone. Thought you could push her around without me here to stop you." Her bravado was crumbling now, fear mixing with the fury in her eyes. "We were just trying to protect the neighborhood," she said. "You don't belong here. People don't want a hunting shack ruining the neighborhood's image. And if you think you can intimidate me with that gun, you'll find out just how connected I am." I stepped closer, the shotgun never wavering. "You're not in charge here. You never were. You're trespassing on private land with weapons, falsified authority, and threats. That's criminal, and I'm going to make sure the sheriff knows it." Claire stepped behind me, her voice firm now. I've got it all on camera. From the moment they stepped onto the porch. Everything. You can hear them threatening me. You can see him grab me. Karen's bravado faltered. One of the men whispered something to the others. I overheard the words, "This is bad. We need to go." "You're not going anywhere," I said. "Not until the sheriff gets here. Sit down." Hands visible. They hesitated. I raised my voice, deep and commanding, the kind of voice I'd used for years in the Ranger Service to break up poacher camps. That did it. They sat down, tense and angry, but not moving. Karen glared at me, venom in her eyes, but didn't speak. I lowered the shotgun slightly and grabbed my phone. Dialed 911. "This is Mike Thompson. I need deputies at my residence. I've got 4 trespassers detained at gunpoint. One of them just assaulted my wife. Bring a unit and bring a detective." When the sheriff arrived, things moved fast. The deputies disarmed the trespassers. One had a stun baton, another had a small folding knife, and the third was carrying zip ties. When they found the false HOA property transfer document in Karen's binder, everything unraveled. "This signature," said Detective Harris, his face hardening, "belongs to a county clerk who died 4 years ago. You really thought this would hold up?" Karen didn't flinch. "It was filed before he passed," she said, her voice cold. "We had every right to act. The board doesn't have jurisdiction over property that isn't included in its founding charter," Harris snapped. "This land's been in the Thompson family since the 1950s. You knew that." Karen didn't speak. She couldn't. The truth was out. Claire stood, holding up her phone. "I have them on camera entering without consent. You can hear them threaten me. You can see him grab my wrist." The deputies took the phone and played the footage. Karen's voice, cold and calculating, filled the room, and everything they'd tried to do to us was laid bare. Karen finally snapped, shouting about defamation, overreach, and her right to enforce the HOA's rules. But it didn't matter. Not anymore. The deputies cuffed them, one by one. Karen, looking defeated, bolted for the door, but Deputy Morris tackled her just outside. The sheriff gave me a small nod as they took her away. "We'll need a full statement," he said. In the days that followed, everything fell apart for the HOA. Karen was arraigned on charges: criminal trespassing, unlawful restraint, assault, attempted coercion, and fraud. She pled not guilty, of course, but the case was too airtight. The judge sentenced her to probation and fined her. The HOA board, implicated in the scheme, had to face public scrutiny. Several members resigned. For us, things were different now. We didn't just win, we got peace. And a lot of it. The court awarded us restitution for legal costs, emotional distress, and property violation, $150,000 in all. But what made it worth it was the final feeling of relief, like a breath you didn't realize you were holding. We could finally relax. Life, once again, became simple. Claire went back to teaching. I built a new woodshed. The HOA was banned from contacting us, from even leaving a pamphlet in our mailbox. And we were free to live our lives on our terms. But every now and then, when I sit on the porch and watch the sun sink behind the trees, I think back to that moment when I stepped into my own home, shotgun in hand, and saw those trespassers in my living room, cornering my wife. It wasn't planned. It wasn't rehearsed. But I don't regret it. Because out here where the trees stand taller than any HOA rule, and the creek drowns out the noise of bureaucratic nonsense, this is my country. This is my home. And I'm the one who stands watch.